Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 13, Behavior of a Perfect Person, text number 11. Atrapyuda haratimam idahasam putra nanatanam paradasya cha samvadam unir ajagra rasya cha atrapyuda harantimam idahasam puratanam paradasya cha samvadam munir ajagrarasya cha atrapyuda harantimam itihasam puratanam paradasya cha samvadam munira jagarasya cha. Mataji. Atrapyuda harantimam itihasam puratanam paradasya cha samvadam munira jagarasya cha. Atra, therein, api, although not exposed to common eyes, udaharanti, the learned sages recite as an example. Imam, this, itahasam, historical incident. Puratanam, very, very old. Paradasya, of Prahlad Maharaj. Cha, also. Samvadam, conversation. Une, of the great saintly person. Ajagrasya, took the profession of a python. I wonder how much he was getting paid. He was a professional python. Probably the only one in history. Cha, also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami to the Prabhupada. As an historical example of this, learned sages recite the story of an ancient discussion between Prahlad Maharaj and a great saintly person who was feeding himself like a python. Vegetarian though, by the way, he didn't eat animals. This purport, the saintly person met by Prahlad Maharaj was undergoing ajagara vriti, the living conditions of a python, which does not go anywhere but sits in one place for years and eats whatever is automatically available. Prahlad Maharaj, along with his associates, met this great saint and spoke to him as follows. So what was this an historical example of? Don't go back. What was this an historical example of? Well, it's... Yeah, you're just reading from this verse, but what was the last verse? What is it referring to? From yesterday. What was the verse yesterday that this is referring to? We don't know. You didn't look, did you?
Sorry?
You didn't look back, did you? At the verse?
No.
Yeah, the behavior of a perfect person, a saintly person, who doesn't expose himself to the outside vision of human society, but by his behavior, his purpose is disclosed. So it says, to a human society, he should present himself like a restless child, and although the greatest orator, he should present himself like a dumb man. So here's an example. Here's a person, he didn't do anything. Now, anyone who doesn't do anything nowadays would be probably arrested for vagrancy. If they allow homeless people, he would be considered the homeless. But even the homeless people would stay away from him because he would probably be arrested of being considered crazy. He's not even trying to get something to eat. He's just waiting for someone to give him something to eat. How many homeless people do that? How many homeless people are saintly persons? Maybe some. So here's an historical example of a saintly person, and this example is one who's taken the vow of ajagrata vriti, that he doesn't go out and look for food. He just, if food comes, and he eats it. If it doesn't come, he doesn't eat it. That's called faith, that Krishna is going to supply what you lack. So let's see what happens. Does he die from starvation? He became an extremely thin python and then died. Or he got so hungry, anything that walked by he grabbed and put into his mouth. Let's find out what happens. So these are translation. The next verse, 13. Prahlad Maharaj, the most dear servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, once went out touring the universe, not just walking around his kingdom. Where was he living at this time, Prahlad? No, this is way beyond when he was 5 years old. Where was Prahlad living? What happened to Prahlad after Nrsimhadev came? Lord Nrsimhadev and killed Hiranyakashipu. Where did Prahlad go? Did he go into hiding? Fearful of the other demons might get revenge. Where did he go? Yeah, well, that's where did he become a king? Where did Bali Maharaj go? Oh, not Balaram Maharaj. No. Where actually Bali Maharaj also? Where did Bali Maharaj go? Sutala, yes. Yeah, if you want to, you can go and visit him if you want. Yeah, he's there too with Bali. So he was touring the universe. I mean, Sutala is one of the major planetary systems. There are 14 planetary systems. Sutala is one of them. But Prahlad Maharaj had the ability, he was going to see what was going on in the other places. Some of his confidential associates, just to study the nature of saintly persons. Thus he arrived at the bank of the Kuveri, where there was a mountain known as Saya. So Kuveri is somewhere. I don't know where this Saya mountain is. There he found a great saintly person who was lying on the ground, covered with dirt and dust, who was deeply spiritually advanced. Neither by that saintly person's activities, by his bodily features, by his words, nor by the symptoms of his varnashram status, could people understood whether he was the same person they had known. Purport. The inhabitants of that particular place on the bank of the Kuveri and the valley of the mountain known as Saya were unable to understand whether that saint was the same man they had known. It is therefore said, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigena Bhujhaya. A highly advanced Vaishnava lives in such a way that no one can understand what he is or what he was. Nor should attempts be made to understand the past of a Vaishnava. Without asking the saintly person about his previous life, Prahlad Maharaj immediately offered his respectful obeisances. Prahlad was quite perceptive. Most people, they probably saw the person, would think that the person had gone crazy or whatever. But Prahlad could understand the exalted nature of the person, and therefore he offered respectful obeisances. Interesting that when Prabhupada told Shyamasundar to go to his place in Chipawad and destroy all his records of his family and things like that, Prabhupada didn't want those to be available in the future. People would point to them in different ways and create even more controversy than there already is. We have enough controversies. We don't have to add to them. The advanced devotee Prahlad Maharaj duly worshipped and offered obeisances to the saintly person who had adopted the python's means of livelihood. After thus worshipping the saintly person and touching his own head to the saint's lotus feet, Prahlad Maharaj, in order to understand him, inquired very submissively as follows. Although Prahlad's a Mahajan, one of our 12 Mahajans, wasn't that he was thinking, look, I'm a Mahajan. You may be somewhat like a saintly person, but, Mahajans are just like above everyone else. As soon as you saw me, you should have immediately offered respects. But just to invoke your consciousness, I'll offer respects, hopefully, to avoid having you made an offense by not offering respects to me. No, Prahlad didn't think like that. Saintly persons like Prahlad, they're humble. They don't. They're not looking for others to honor them. When they see someone honorable, they honor them without expecting honor in return. Seeing the saintly person be quite fat. Oh, that's interesting. If you sit in one place as a saintly person, you'll get fat. Not only because you don't do anything, but because somehow or another Krishna will arrange it, you'll actually get some prasadam. Now, we could try that for a day. Everyone can sit in their room and see if anyone brings a prasadam. You may have to try it a few days or a week or whatever. And then people may get concerned and think, why aren't you eating? I'm just waiting. I was waiting for someone to ask me. Seeing the saintly person to be quite fat, Prahlad Maharaj said, my dear sir, you undergo no endeavor to earn your livelihood, but you have a stout body, exactly like that of a materialistic enjoyer. I know that if one is very rich and has nothing to do, he becomes extremely fat by eating and sleeping, performing no work. So what's the difference between the saintly person and a materialistic enjoyer? Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not like his disciples to become very fat in the course of time. So everyone should go on the scale and see what was happening. He would become very anxious upon seeing his fat disciples becoming bogis or enjoyers of the senses. When Prabhupada was joking about Pishama, his sister. Pishama means aunt. So she was like an aunt to the devotees. And just jokingly, Pishama was there, and she didn't understand English. But Prabhupada was saying to some of the disciples in the room, Pishama, she claims she doesn't eat anything. Now, how can someone be as fat as she is and doesn't eat anything? And then Prabhupada started to giggle. And Pishama, not understanding anything, began to laugh also. She was a pure devotee, though, by the way. She wasn't an ordinary personality. Disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. This attitude is herewith confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj, who was surprised to see a saintly person adopting ajagara vritti and becoming very fat. In the material world also, we generally see that when a man who is poor and skinny generally endeavors to earn money through business or some other means, and when he then gets money, he enjoys the senses to his satisfaction. By enjoying the senses, one becomes fat. Therefore, in the spiritual advancement, becoming fat is not at all satisfactory. O Brahmana, fully in knowledge and transcendence, you have nothing to do, and therefore you are lying down. It is also understood that you have no money for sense enjoyment. How then has your body become so fat? Under the circumstances, if you do not consider my question impertinent, kindly explain how this has happened. Purport. Generally, those engaged in spiritual advancement take food only once, either in the forenoon or in the evening. If one takes food only once, naturally he does not become fat. Prabhupada, by the way, didn't take food only once. I mean, what Prabhupada means by food is not if you have, some light breakfast, maybe some milk at night, that's considered to be more than one meal. Prabhupada means a major meal. Like when I'm traveling in the airplanes over long distances internationally, there are sometimes like three or four meals in the course of the journey. And they're not little meals generally. They serve like at least 2, if not 3 big meals. And you see people eating everything. Practically, you wonder if they're going to eat the napkin. They want to get what they paid for. And if some way the stewardess comes over to me and says, "Would you like something?" I say, "No." They get really shocked. They're afraid I might starve to death during the flight. They want to pressure you into getting something. It's almost like they feel insulted if you don't eat their food. I say, "Well, I brought my own." Some of them say, "Yeah, that's a good idea." Then they leave you alone if you know that they know you're not going to starve to death and they're responsible. See, generally if one takes food only once, generally does not become fat. The learned sage, however, was quite fat, and therefore Prahlad Maharaj was very much surprised. Because of being experienced in self-realization, transcendentalist certainly becomes bright-faced. And one who is advanced in self-realization must be considered to possess the body of a Brahmana. Of course, in India, they say, Brahmins are generally a little fatter on the stomach. Brahma Bhoja. So if you don't always find thin Brahmins. Sometimes they're pretty big, and people like that. It means that the Brahmins are being well taken care of. One who's advanced in self-realization must be considered to possess the body of a Brahmin, because the bright-faced, saintly person was lying down, not working, yet was quite fat. Prahlad Maharaj was puzzled, wanted to question him about this. So eventually we'll get the answer if anyone's inquisitive. Hang on. We'll come to the verse. You'll find out. Your honor appears learned, expert and intelligent in every way. You can speak very well, saying things that are pleasing to the heart. You see that people in general engage in fruitive activities, yet we are lying here inactive. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj studied the bodily features of the saintly person, and through the saint's physiognomy, Prahlad Maharaj could understand that he was intelligent and expert, although he was lying down and not doing anything. Prahlad was naturally inquisitive about why he was lying there and inactive. Translation. Narada Muni continued, when the saintly person was thus questioned by Prahlad Maharaj, the king of the Daityas, he was captivated by the shower of nectarian words, replied to the inquisitiveness of Prahlad Maharaj with a smiling face. The saintly person said, well, we might get part of the answer here. "Oh, best of the Asuras." Imagine calling Prahlad, well, my dear demon. Best of the demons. Who did Prahlad call the best of the demons?
His father.
His father, yeah. So Prahlad Maharaj now took over his position as the best of the demons. Surya Varya. Prahlad Maharaj, who are recognized by advanced civilized men, you're aware of the different stages of life because of your inherent transcendental eyes, with which you can see a man's character and thus know clearly the results of acceptance and rejections of things as they are. Purport. A pure devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can understand the minds of others because of his pure vision and devotional service. A devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can study another man's character without difficulty. So here we see some of the interactions between saintly people. It's not like they say, well, let me tell you, Prahlad, and then just says something. First, he addresses Prahlad Maharaj and glorifies him as a saintly person who's worthy of asking such a question because he has transcendental vision, and therefore he is worthy to receive the answer. Not that someone walks by the saintly person and says, hey, you look pretty fat. How come you're getting so fat? What do you What are you eating, by the way? Maybe I can eat some of it too. No, the saintly people generally respond to the sincerity of the inquirer and his qualifications. They don't just respond to everyone, whatever they ask. They're introspective and they're cautious in how they present things. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of God, is full of all opulences, is predominant within the core of your heart because of your being a pure devotee. He always drives away all the darkness of ignorance as the sun drives away the darkness of the universe. Purport. The words Bhaktya Kevalaya indicate that simply by executing devotional service, one can become full of all knowledge. Krishna is the master of all knowledge. Aishvaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashashasriyaha. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara sarabhutanam hrideshe arjunatishtate. And when the Lord is pleased with the devotee, the Lord instructs him. Only to the devotees, however, does the Lord give instructions by which to advance further and further in devotional service. To others, the non-devotees, the Lord gives instructions according to the manner of their surrender. The pure devotee is described by the words Bhaktya Kevalaya. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Bhaktya Kevalaya means Jnana Karma Dinaya Mishraya, unmixed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all the devotees' enlightenment and awareness. My dear King, although you know everything, you have posed some questions, which I shall try to answer according to what I have learned by hearing from authorities. I cannot remain silent in this regard, for a personality like you is just fit to be spoken to by one who desires self-purification. Doesn't come out with the answer just immediately. He has some preliminary explanation why he's answering and what the qualifications of the inquirer should be, etc. Purport: a saintly person does not wish to speak to anyone and everyone, and is therefore grave and silent. Generally, a common man does not need to be advised. Unless one is prepared to take instructions, it is said that a saintly person should not address him, although sometimes, because of great kindness, a saintly person speaks to ordinary men. As for Prahlad Maharaj, however, since he was not a common ordinary man, whatever questions he posed would have to be answered, even by a great and exalted personality. Therefore, the saintly Brahmins did not remain silent, but began to answer. These questions, however, were not concocted by him. This is indicated by the words yata shrutam, meaning as I have heard from the authorities. In the parampara system, when the questions are bona fide, the answers are bona fide. No one should attempt to create or manufacture answers. One must refer to the Shastras and give answers according to Vedic understanding. The word yata shrutam refers to Vedic knowledge. The Vedas are known as Shruti because this knowledge is received from authorities. The statements of the Vedas are known as Shruti Pramana. One should quote evidence from the Shruti, the Vedas, or the Vedic literature, and then one's statements will be correct. Otherwise, one's words will proceed from mental concoction. Anuvegam karam vakyam sattvam priyahitam jayat swarya abhyastanam chaiva vangmana tapuchate. That austerity of speech, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is anuvegam karam vakyam. That means it doesn't agitate people's minds. Satyam, it's truthful. Priya, it's pleasing. Hitam, it's beneficial. And swaraya abhyasanam jaiva. And it also, one quotes from the Vedic authority. Therefore, it's not easy to say something or write something which will actually be effective. It has to have many qualities, which takes more or less contact with the super soul to actually achieve. Not ordinary people can say things which don't agitate people's minds, at the same time are truthful, at the same time are pleasing, at the same time are beneficial, and at the same time follow the Vedic literature. Therefore, Prabhupada did not think that just anyone could write something or translate books of Vedic literature unless they were highly qualified. That it really depends more on realization than by scholarship. And therefore, the saintly person was willing to reciprocate with Prahlad Maharaj because he was highly qualified. And therefore, he would be able to understand the communication and be able to utilize it properly. So I'll stop there. We'll find out tomorrow what the saintly person has to say. Come back tomorrow, you'll find out. Otherwise, you can wait till we get up to this verse in probably 5 or 10 years from now. You'll have to be patient. So any comments or questions?
How this refers to modern day sannyasis?
Well, some of them sit, they don't do anything. And people bring them prasadam. So they've taken the profession of a python, following this saintly person's example.
You know best.
What's that?
You know best.
I don't know everything, but since you asked. Anything else? Luckily, I can't think of so many who are doing that profession right now. But maybe some of our sannyasis will adopt it in the future, especially when they read the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and think, yeah, I always wanted to adopt the profession of a python. Go on the internet, find out how to do it. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.